The Lyrians came to a crossroads. As Meve and her scouts conferred about the proper path to take, a footman, of a sudden, collapsed upon the muddy ground. His comrades strove to rouse him. Alas, to no avail. Meve called for a medic. One arrived, post-haste. He checked for wounds, a heartbeat, all else for which a medic checks. Then he peered down the soldier's throat. In a flash, he was on his feet, his hand over his mouth, backing away.
What's with him? What's wrong?
The Queen asked, her eyes darting between the medic and his patient.
Typhus exanthematicus, Your Grace.
Replied the physician, wiping his hands with a spirit-soaked cloth.
Typhus fever.
Contagious?
Extremely, I fear. Though not yet at this stage. The spots are but in his mouth for now. Tomorrow he'll be blotched all over. It's then the disease turns infectious.
I see. What about a cure? Is one known?
The medic looked at Meve, shook his head and shrugged. Alas, there was precisely naught he could do. But where medicine fails, magic may at times stand in. Without giving it two thoughts, Meve called for Isbel.
It's typhus, I've no doubt.
The healer confirmed.
I know a spell that could be helpful. Vigal's cleansing, we call it. It takes time to prepare and many ingredients. Rather costly, or...
Coin's no object,
said Meve.
Get to work at once.
Isbel returned from the local herbalist with herbs valuable and rare. Fern blossoms, mandrake root, comfrey seeds, and more. She then pulled from her bundle a variety of vessels, funnels, retorts, alembics, carafes. Colored concoctions she then brewed, steam and strange odors rising from them. Hours later, after much effort, she had a few drops of a thick substance in a flask. Isbel whispered an incantation, then gave the remedy to the dying man. His tremors and fever subsided at once, the other symptoms fading within hours. At last, Meve could breathe a deep sigh of relief.
I can't afford to sacrifice so great an amount.
I understand, Your Grace.
Replied Isbel.
And please know, I sympathize. 'Twere a difficult choice you faced.
The Queen said nothing and hung her head. Far more onerous was the choice she was next forced to make. The medic gazed at Meve, shook his head and shrugged. On a cloth laid on the ground, the afflicted convulsed and mumbled feverishly.
What does one do in such a case?
Your Majesty, it sounds cruel, I know, but we must leave him and march on. Else our force could be decimated by an epidemic in the ranks.
The entire force I cannot risk for but one man,
said the Queen to the medic.
We leave him.
Your Grace, we oughtn't let the others know. They'll march ahead, we'll linger a bit so no one...
Out of the question. Those who fight for me, I will not deceive.
The Queen assembled the force and laid bare her intention. She would leave the ailing man to waste away and die. Those who knew him pleaded, protested, cursed the heavens. But Meve was unmoved and gave the order to march. She then rode at the fore, to hide her eyes that could not hold the tears she wept.
Might he recover? Is there a chance?
Asked the Queen of the surgeon.
Perhaps 1 in 50, Your Grace, but...
But there is a chance.
Your Majesty, I must warn you.
You have already, it's been noted. Now get that man onto a wagon.
Meve gave the order to march and rode at the fore, undoubtedly to hide the fear and concern in her eyes. The Queen visited the field hospital to look in on the ailing man. She learned his suffering had come to an end. He lay motionless beneath a gossamer-thin cloth. Only his rash-mottled feet were exposed. Though they burned his body the very next day, 4 other soldiers showed symptoms of the disease. 1 day later, there were 20. 2 days on, even more. Feverish, they staggered, labored, frequently collapsed. Meve was forced to halt the march and await the worst. When at last the force moved on, it left many fresh graves in its wake.